Hello and welcome to Food Systems, a podcast from the Forum for the Future of Agriculture, where we discuss new ideas that can shape a sustainable food system from farm to fork, from policy to consumers, and everything in between. I'm your host, Robert de Graaf, and you can find us on Twitter at Forum for Ag. These episodes will be available every other week on all major podcast platforms. Before we get started, we'd like to say a quick thank you to the FFA founding partners, the European Landowners Organization and Syngenta, as well as the FFA strategic partners, Cargill, the Nature Conservancy, Rabobank, Thought for Food, and the World Wildlife Fund. Please enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome back to Food Systems. We've done a series of episodes on the issue of eating meat and its impact on people and the environment. So today I'm very pleased that we're going to be talking about one of the alternatives that's coming up. Our guest today is Katharina Unger. She's the founder of Livin Studios and Livin Farms, both companies that specialize in edible insects and protein alternatives. She was one of the MIT Tech Review Innovators Under 30 for Europe. So it's a great pleasure to be joined today by Katharina Unger. Katharina, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Hi.
Hi. I wanted to sort of take it into two questions because your business seems to run along two lines. More the industrial application, the farm side of things, and the education and personal use. And to get started on the industrial farming side, would you consider that growing insects for protein, do you consider yourself a farm? And can you sort of sketch for our listeners what a full-scale, farm-sized insect protein operation looks like in practice?
Right. Yeah. As you mentioned, we have two parts of the business. We started out in a very consumer-oriented part of the way of like making a product with home farms for growing insects in your home. But since 2019, we're really focused on the industrial technologies specifically. Whether this is a farm or a feed producing operation or whatsoever is always a little bit tricky. It always depends how you look at it. In fact, really a part of what we're doing on site is a farming operation. So we are registered as a farming business. And the other parts of the business are feed or food producing parts of the business. And then a third part of it is the trading part of it. So it always depends how you look at it. It's a very interdisciplinary endeavor, as you can imagine. There's multiple parts and multiple aspects playing into there. That we have a really hands-on farming approach to things on the one hand, and we have to look into the details of like the biology of the insects and how that can play out in an industrial scale on the other hand. And then there's a very technological aspect to it, like of how can we actually make this work all together, and like how can we combine automation, machinery, insects, and the digestion of food waste, ideally, as a package together to provide an innovation for the food system. So it's an exciting project to run. We are right now. I'm sitting in our new site in Vienna. It's about 1,400 square meters, where we're building our demonstrator of our plug and play insect farming module here. So it's an industrial scale insect farming equipment that will enable customers from the food or feed industries or even the recycling industries to process their side streams. Low value byproducts from their production processes, for example, to be eaten by insect larvae that transform it to much higher quality end product, which is protein meal, protein powder, fat, and fertilizer.
Well, this brings me sort of logically to the next question. I think people listening to this podcast, when they think of insects, they will think of more sort of the human consumption, the home consumption. Can you just briefly sketch for our listeners what are the other applications for these proteins, and what kind of interest is there?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, the lowest hanging fruit at the moment and what we're working on right now is really animal feed. Of course, there's a huge potential in insect proteins being implemented in human food applications. That's definitely one of the major future ways to go. Right now, it is, as you can imagine, a bit easier to serve the pet food markets. So we're talking literally dog food and cat food as a protein ingredient, and the fish feed market. So those are the two animal markets that are totally legal on a European level to serve right now, and they're facing a major protein shortage, especially. So in Europe, especially, we are only producing about 25% of the protein meals that are being used in animal feed locally. So a huge part of what we're feeding to animals here on the continent is actually imported from abroad, and it very often comes from the ocean. So in fact, 5 tons of ocean fish is needed to produce 1 ton of fish meal that then goes into various animal feeding operations. So it's very wasteful system. We, in terms of land use, we use 2/3 of the land worldwide just to grow feed for animals. So fixing the issue of animal feed is a very large problem to solve. And it's a market that is very welcoming to the idea of insects as a protein source. For the human food aspect, as you can imagine, there are a bit more hurdles. This market is really growing as well. However, there are, of course, consumer acceptance hurdles that still need to be overcome. And now we just, in the middle of January, we received notice from the European Union. There is a first green light for mealworms, for a particular type of insect, to be approved and legal in human food. Diverging from the novel food aspects, we finally have it on the horizon that insects will be legal to feed humans as well.
I wanted to get back into the consumer area in a little while, because I do think it's fascinating. But as you say, the European Commission has just greenlit the mealworm for human consumption as well. This is part of the EU's new novel food regulation. Right now, do you feel that to further develop your business and expand this in Europe, is the current regulatory environment sufficient, or is there things that you would like to see changed?
Yeah, so from an animal feed perspective, we are waiting on a European level for the markets for poultry feed and pig feed to open up. So it is still not allowed to sell insect protein powder into these markets. It's not considered safe yet. And once these markets open, which we know are being discussed right now, and we know this is on the horizon, then of course major markets are going to open. So I think, yes, on the regulatory end, there are still a lot of things to do. The fish feed market, the pet food market, those are big markets, but it will be a real game changer once insects can be fed to poultry and pigs as well. The second aspect to it is that there is a regulatory hurdle in terms of the substrates that we are allowed to feed to insects. So we fall into the same regulatory framework as other livestock. So in general, we can only feed substrates to insects that can also be fed to other livestock. So obviously, as you can imagine, this creates like a sort of a competition because animal feed can then be sold into different markets. The big potential of insects is that they can digest lower value ingredients, make high value proteins from it, and they can also digest to a certain extent substrates that might not be as safe to feed to other livestock.
Well, this brings me to an interesting sort of follow-up. When I was doing my research for this, I saw that among the things you've done is a pilot project with Lidl supermarkets to turn food waste into animal proteins through the use of insects. I was wondering, what are the lessons you've learned from doing that project? Is that something that can be replicated at scale, using supermarket food waste through insects to create more protein?
So this project was really about the fact that the supermarket and many retail chains right now, they have not separated their bakery waste specifically from the rest of the organic waste. So vegetable and fruit waste was being put together with bakery waste, and then this created something that could not be safely used as an animal feed. So what we did was we worked towards a separation, and actually in Austria nationwide, they then introduced, as a result from our project, the nationwide separation of bakery waste from other organic waste streams, and therefore it became safe for us to feed bakery waste or old bakery to insects in order to use them as both livestock feed but also human food.
I just wanted to ask one more question about the regulatory use. You've said that you are registered as a farm. Are you able to receive, if you're growing insects, can you receive subsidies under the Common Agricultural Policy?
That is a very good question, one that I ask myself. So far, we have not received any subsidies as a farming operation. We have received other national subsidies and a big European grant funding from the EIC, from the European Innovation Council. We just closed this recently. So as a business, we have received subsidies, not as a farm yet, but we are looking into those options right now.
I wanted to turn now from sort of the more industrial side of things to the more at-home consumer educational farms. One of the things that you've done is this is the Livin Farms part, where you've started a Kickstarter for people to grow insects at home for consumption. Now, what is your expectation for people to get one of these home insect farms outside those who are essentially what I like to call pre-interested, i.e. people who for some reason are already in this eating insect mindset?
Right. Well, so on the Kickstarter back then, it was in fact really more than 800 people from around the world that pledged the Kickstarter. And as a Kickstarter campaign is effectively a pre-order campaign. So you convince people to support you in developing your project and in pre-ordering it. And as a reward for their pledge, for their donation, they receive a product. And most of those customers that have pledged in the first campaign, they were not in any way, working or already interested in the insect field, but they were really interested in the aspects of sustainability, of sustainable eating, of sustainable living. That's really the type of community that we were building. And now that we're transitioning into education, we brought out a second model of our Hive Home that we promoted back then. It's called Hive Explorer. So it's a much smaller model, specifically framed towards education. We developed a curriculum over 13 lessons that go through various aspects of sustainability. Those are really our community there is really willing to learn more about how they can lead a more sustainable lifestyle.
Okay, so I was wondering if you could sort of talk me through the steps for a consumer at home who has one of these kits. Talk me through how I go from my drawer full of mealworms. How do I turn it into food? What kind of steps? Is it just like normal cooking?
Right. Yeah. So first of all, I have to say that the goal of this home mealworm farm that we're currently distributing is, as I mentioned, rather education than the cooking part of it. So there is much less of an amount that you can harvest from that unit as opposed to our bigger unit that we sold before. However, in any case, a lot of people still use the worms that they grow for cooking, and the process for preparing them in order to do so is to take them out of their tray. So they're in a sort of a sieving tray, so they're already kind of passively sieved. You shake them a little bit again so that the fine dirt goes off. It's like the manure of the mealworms can be harvested as a fertilizer, and it's like dry sand that stays in the bottom tray, and you harvest them in the top tray, and then you put them into the freezer. That's the most humane way to put them to sleep. And then after a couple of hours, when they're frozen, you can then boil them cook them, fry them, dry them in the oven, for example, and grind them down to a powder. There's really a variety of ways how you can prepare them afterwards.
It just brings me neatly on to my next question. You say you freeze them and then you sort of humanely dispatch them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a conversation going on? Because we talk a lot, certainly when we talk about vegetarianism, I think a lot of people do that also for ethical and moral reasons about the consumption of animals. What do you consider about the ethics of eating insects? Is it something different from eating cows and chickens to you, or how does that? What's the ethical side of it?
Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting, a very important question indeed. We have to remind ourselves, of course, that insects are living organisms. They are animals. They're not plants. They're not lifeless matter. We are dealing with animals here, and they have to be treated ethically, and they have to be treated with respect. And we have to be mindful of their well-being as well. So there are questions from from our community or from potential customers coming up over and over again, saying, "Well, I'm vegan or I'm vegetarian. Can I eat insects? Is that suitable for me?" And then we always have to say that, well, it is not vegetarian. It's not definitely not vegan. It is an animal that you're eating, and we have found out that actually quite a lot of customers that are vegan or are vegetarian can actually live with the fact of eating insects. They cannot live with the fact eating other animals, but they can eating insects, often for sustainability reasons, because they see that there is a reason why insect eating makes sense over eating or farming other types of livestock. And then, of course, there is also an ethical consideration, which is more of a sensitive issue, I think. We know that insects are invertebrates. They're not mammals. They have a very different kind of biological system. They experience pain in a very different way. They do not have central nervous systems. They don't have a central brain where pain gets processed in a similar way as in other animals. So they are very different from our systems, and that's what makes it easier for a lot of people to accept eating insects over other livestock. However, I have to say that, of course, this is still ongoing research, and we have to be very mindful of always updating ourselves of what is currently the status of information that we have on how pain works in insects. In addition, maybe what I can say is that insects also have a very different needs. So, as you know, cattle or pigs, they need space to roam around. They need companions. They need space and fresh air. Insects love to live in dense spaces. They actually like to live in what we would call like mass farming. They need other insects to touch their bodies in order to develop their skins. So you need a certain density of farming insects in order for them to even thrive. So the framework of farming insects industrially, as opposed to other animals, it's a very different ballgame here that we're talking about.
This brings me, well, we're coming up to the end of the podcast, but before I ask you the final question, I just wanted to bring up one last thing. When I was doing my reading around the issues of eating insects and looking at your company and others, the selling point often seems to be about low emissions, sustainability, low impact on the environment, etc. But we've seen these sorts of selling points before: low carbon, more sustainable, and not many of these things really break through in the mainstream. So how are we going to make these insect proteins, how are we going to make them break through on the open consumer market?
The breakthrough is, in the mainstream, a breakthrough is often considered something that happens overnight because maybe a large part of the consumers are in the unknown about something for a very long time, and then suddenly it seems to be there everywhere. While in fact, a lot of the foods that we see around, that we consume on a daily basis, they have been in the works for a really long time. If we only think of tofu, of soy-based products, it has been a niche for a very, very long time, and only maybe for 20 years, even if you consider first movements in the US that promoted it very publicly, then only in the last couple of years has it really become a mainstream product that is very widely accepted. We shouldn't be too illusional that something like insects will break through, also overnight. No, it takes a lot of time, but it has changed already tremendously since I first started to work with insects in 2012, 2013, where literally no one at an event where I asked, have you eaten insects before? Almost no one raised their hands. That now, like 7 years later, you can hardly find people who have not tried it yet or who have not at least read about it or heard about it. So it does take a long time until it trickles down to every single person. It becomes something we call mainstream. But it will eventually happen. Like one aspect is that it just takes time. And the second aspect is that it takes the right products. Right now, I think it hasn't been the case yet. There has been a lot of developments, but we have not yet kind of reached that level where something is really addictive, so that you want to have it again. Also, in order to get into the mainstream, it has to be accepted as an ingredient. So something that is on the ingredients list but might not be necessarily promoted as the insect bar. No, it's a protein bar based on insects maybe, or it's a protein product that includes this animal insect protein that is very beneficial for your body and has very functional benefits. And with the EU giving the green light to mealworms as a human food ingredient, there is a major step is being done towards that direction. Once this is finally absolutely through and legal, then we can go ahead and actually use it as an ingredient in applications where won't have the common ick factor anymore.
This brings us to the end of the podcast, and we always ask the same question of everybody who comes on, and I will ask the same to you, which is, if you could give one answer to make the food system more sustainable, more climate friendly, more environmentally friendly, what would it be? And I'm going to eat more insects off the table, because that's what we've just been discussing.
Right. I would say if I have to focus on one single thing, then it's try to reduce food waste in the first place.
Katharina Unger, founder of Livin Studios and Livin Farms, thank you very much for joining Food Systems today.
Thank you very much for talking to me, Robert. Thanks.
You've been listening to an episode of Food Systems, a podcast brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. Look for us in 2 weeks when we release our new episode. And in the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe on your podcast app, as well as on Twitter @ForumFag, for updates on this podcast, news, as well as FFA events. Please check out our website, www.forumforagriculture.com, for more great content. Thank you for listening and enjoy your day.